Cassian was right across the board. Luthen says you have to think like a leader. I think he's thinking like a leader more than Luthen is. Cassian tells Luthen they're not ready, and they're not.
Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan.
Welcome everyone to Krypton to Alderaan. I'm Joey, your Star Wars lover, and with me as always is Royish Goodlooks, your Star Wars song guy.
Hello, Joey. Hello, podcast.
Hello, podcast. And we're the video podcast that analyzes nerdy pop culture, but it's mostly Star Wars. And this episode, we will be talking about episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Andor Season 2. Ever been to Ghorman? I have friends everywhere. And what a festive evening. And you know what? I've really had to, what's the line? What's the line from Partagaz?
Calibrate your enthusiasm?
Enthusiasm. We're halfway through. This is the official halfway point. We're done. We're almost done. As much as I liked these episodes, we'll get into that, but it's also a little bit sad. Royce, how did you feel about these 3 episodes?
Dude, when you put it in that context, that is crazy. Like, the season started last week, and it's halfway over, right? And we're
6 episodes in.
I know.
And we only started last week.
We always want more. We're like, oh, or at least I do. The episode cut off short. Give me more. And all of a sudden you get 3 episodes a week, and we have only 2 more weeks. This is the longest running Star Wars show, both in episode length, number of episodes, and length of episodes, but the shortest in calendar runtime. Insane.
More stats. We're gonna need a new column in your spreadsheet for calendar runtime.
You're right. This is a whole other episode to go on. I haven't been keeping a lot of stats this season. I've abandoned that for this season. But dude, this is the top of my notes here. Is there's just so much to keep track of. The good thing about it is it rewards the rewatch. So I was able to watch the episodes like 2.5 times. I screen record them and watch one of them at like two times speed. So I try to cram in a couple of rewatches before we get on the show here, but there's still a lot to rewatch. And one of the things I miss from last season and other Star Wars seasons is just being able to have one episode. I know this has only been the second week of Andor, but to have one episode that I watched 3 times and then the next, rather than one arc of 3 episodes that you have to go back in. Like, I'm missing stuff is how I kind of feel, or at least it's harder to appreciate in real time, but it does reward the rewatch. I was happy to see that, like, the ending of this arc, it was suspenseful, it was uncomfortable, just like last week, but I did think we got at least a little bit of a release. You know, I loved the ending with Luthen, like, oh, it hurts to smile, and we should have killed Krennic. Some comic relief there, and then, you know, Bix's revenge, a little bit of a like, okay, yeah, we're getting some wins in here. We didn't leave off on a complete bummer note like last arc. Yeah, man. Lots more to dive into, but that's kind of my overarching thoughts so far. How do you feel about the arc?
Similarly, in that it's a lot to take in. I mean, we're probably going to say that for the next 2 weeks as well.
Yep.
But there is just certainly a lot to take in. I like that you bring up Bix right off the bat and that plot point from the end of the arc, because like we said last week, I think we're going to get these little wins. We're going to get these wins that make us feel really good, but overall, we lose. These episodes maybe pointed a bit more, from my perspective, pointed a bit more to the Empire winning than the previous 3. But it was just really hard to get away from the fact that in these 3 episodes, the Empire is so much better at this than the Rebels currently are. So even though we get stuff like Bix at the end with this little, which I thought was a dream. Did you think that was a dream? Like she's been having these nightmares. When it first started, I thought it was a dream. And then I was like, please don't let this be. Please just let this be her thing. And Luthen gave them that, which was a really, I don't know if nice is the right word, but he wants her to be as strong as she can be. He wants to keep Cassian, so he set this up for them. But when it was going down, I thought it was a dream for sure.
That's really interesting. Yeah, she's like hallucinating. They've done that a handful of times now. That would have made it uncomfortable if she woke up and she's still having, you know, the PTSD from it. No, I wouldn't like that, but I do. I love the creativity. If we're in the writer's room, that's an interesting angle to explore. I'm glad that wasn't the case though, that they got their comeuppance. They're walking towards the end credits as like the music pumps up. One note, dude, on that end music, similar to last week, it's this upbeat kind of rock track, like it's getting you pumped up, but it's got this like synth wave sort of thing, like a lot more synthesizers in this season than I can remember in previous Andor seasons or season. It's still a little bit out of tune. I don't remember the composer's name for this season. Fact check me in the comments, but I feel like there is an intentional use of like detuning some of the instruments, and specifically like these kind of synthesizer instruments. To me, like that's still a little uncomfortable. Like we got the win and we're getting the grand theme song with the rock drums, but the synth is still sort of out of tune. There's still some tension there that's not, completely resolved yet,
I love this. I would love to talk about the music more. And this is also making me think like the composer has changed. I said before we started recording that I can tell, it's noticeable to me that it's different music. It's a different score than last season. And it was made by a different person. And that's pretty noticeable to me. I also now thinking back to our commentary on the trailer and that not being exactly what we wanted to hear, and maybe that being the setup for making us uncomfortable. I mean, whether or not that was intentional, that like started us off on the foot of maybe being a bit more uncomfortable with the music, just based on the revolution starts here being in the trailer and that being like far left field of the way Star Wars has approached this kind of thing. So it's interesting that that's the way it started and this is the way it's going.
I'm not complaining about it. It's just I'm noticing that out of tune nature is definitely a recurring theme at the end of these two arcs.
All of it is set to make us feel uncomfortable, even when we're getting the win. Even when they're walking away in the like action in any other property, we would think that this is cheesy. This is like the action sequence in a movie. They're walking away, slow-mo, explosion. But in this, we're like, they set this up so well with Bix getting this kind of redemption. Luthen gave it to them because he needs them. It's a little victory. And so I didn't find it like cheesy at all as where I would in probably anything else. But it's really interesting to think that that's also corresponding with the music of being like, you think this is a win, but...
Yeah, it could be foreshadowing that in the next arc, like now they caused a stir because we wanted to make sure Andor like could have a, happy-go-lucky life with Bix, and now look what's happening,
Yeah.
Who knows?
This, I think, goes along with my main comment here of these 3 episodes for me pointing out how much more competent, how much more aligned the Empire is than the Rebels here, and how smart they're playing this. And I don't think we see this a lot. In my mind, we see the Empire being kind of buffoony a lot of the time, and the conscription, the stormtroopers not being good at their jobs. Some of these things, like in Star Wars Rebels with Thrawn, in this, especially in these 3 episodes, last season, specifically with Deirdre, we see the Empire being completely competent. They are like the bane, literally, and figuratively in a DC comic sense, where like they live in the shadows. The Rebels are trying to adopt the shadows. And the amount of secrets, the layers of secrets and espionage that's going on, and the Empire tricking people into starting a rebellion that we got to see in these episodes was just absolutely incredible. Like what Deirdre told Krennic last arc, that he needs a rebel insurgency that he can count on to fail, to benefit off of. They're putting that plan into motion here, and it's incredible to watch them set the Ghormans up this way.
Yeah, the Imperials are scary, and it's classic Palpatine Imperials. It's, it was Palpatine all along. Oh, it was Partagaz all along. It was Deirdre all along. Dude, even on top of that, I love that there's one more layer. Partagaz tells Deirdre, like, remember why we're doing this, and Cyril can't know, or I forget exactly what he says there, but like, so wait a minute, Cyril doesn't know that they're gonna like mine for the Calkite or whatever, maybe. I don't know what the next thing is that they're hiding from Cyril. That has to be it, though. I forgot about that from last week, that's the whole point of them setting this all up, is that they want an excuse to just mine the planet, and the planet's going to become unstable. It's going to be a disaster, right? Also, they can get this mineral. Yeah, you have to work in the shadows to pull that off. It's uncomfortable, and you feel bad for the people on Ghorman that are supposed to be peaceful, and they're like, well, we got to fight back. Well, they actually don't know how to fight, and now they're getting in over their heads. There's so much of that in this arc as well, of like, you're saying the Imperials are like showing their might, and the Rebels are trying to do what they can, but they're kind of amateur hour a little bit. And Andor is kind of sizing that up and trying to like get everybody not on the same team per se, but to be like, let's take stock of what's going on before we go to the next step. He doesn't want to help out for the mission. That calibrate your enthusiasm line, I think that is kind of the theme of this. The Empire's showing their might, and some of their ranks are enthusiastic about what they're doing. Cyril's stoked, excellent work, Cyril. This is the greatest day of my life. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And Deidre, when she finds out that there's more info on Axis, she's like, I don't want the glory, but I want to be involved. Like, everybody is eager to get theirs in this arc, both the Empire and the Rebels, but the Rebels are a little bit overly eager and kind of in over their heads. And this is a really nice kind of dichotomy of like, you're seeing the Imperials pull the strings and the Rebels get kind of set up. But even within the Imperials, they're setting their own people up. It's great, And oh man, what's even better is that it's Ghorman, the spider planet, the Gorlectopods, weaving this kind of web, you know? And it's a web.
That's the exact note that I have, however superficial this analogy is. It's the exact note that we are weaving a tangled web around this spider planet.
Man, that would have been great if that's what Luthen said. Maybe a little too on the nose, but where he's like, there's bits and pieces. We're drowning in these bits and pieces. But like, yeah, it's this web. You can't keep track of it all.
The question that kept coming to my mind these 3 episodes was, how do the Rebels ever win? How do they ever win this? We're 3 BBY. We're pretty close to the Battle of Yavin and Luke Skywalker coming in and blowing up the Death Star. It's almost like they needed someone with superpowers to come in and win this for them, because the Rebellion 3 BBY cannot get on the same page, and now even members within the same like rebel fraction cannot get on the same page, and Cassian and Luthen are fighting. It pains me to say that it is a broader scale version of the annoying rebels on Yavin 4 that we saw last week. The way that has scaled up, I was so sad when I made that connection, because because I found them so annoying, and the way that this is scaled up to now this, where there's infighting in Luthen's ranks. There's the Ghormans, who are little baby rebels and don't know what they're doing and are known galaxy-wide as these people. Like, the amount of times it came up in these episodes. Ghorman? Come on, crime is up in Ghorman? Ghorman, for Pete's sakes. Was it dangerous? Was the mission date? No, it was on Ghorman. The amount of times that someone was like, there's nothing. Like, these are peaceful people. Like, they're known as peaceful pacifists, and now they're playing it being rebels. I say playing it because they're being played by the Empire for one thing, and for a second they fail at the end. They cause real harm by trying to do this thing that Cassian even says to prove something that the rest of the people already know. They already know that this armory is being built. Why are they building an armory there? So that you rebel. The spy games the Empire is playing. Ghorman thinks they're playing spy games, but the Empire is making them think they're playing spy games. They're drowning in rumors, they say to Cyril. Rylands thinks that he's playing Cyril and trying to like get Cyril to give him information. Deirdre's keeping the real mission a secret from Cyril.
Cyril's even playing his mother.
Yeah, exactly. The levels at which this game is being played by the Empire is incredible, and the rebels can't even get on the same page, and they are being sucked in to this. Like, Luthen jumps right on board because he's salivating at the idea of this planet being in the rebellion, this prestigious planet. So he's even being sucked in to, which is a really dangerous space for him to be in, obviously. And we see the fallout of that a little bit with what happens to Cinta. And Cassian was right across the board. Like, Luthen says you have to think like a leader. I think he's thinking like a leader more than Luthen is.
Yeah.
Because he's taking account of what he sees on the ground. Luthen's not on the ground. He's playing puppet master from space.
Yeah, he took the Weberese guy's word. He was like, he said you didn't impress him.
Yeah. Like, you're talking to the people who will say anything to get you on their side and taking their word over the spy that you sent in the field. Cassian tells Luthen they're not ready, and they're not. And then the fallout of that is Cassian, what happens to Cinta and Vel is Cassian's greatest fear. It's his whole reason for being paranoid. It's his whole reason for going and kind of risking everything to show up at Luthen's doorstep. And it happens. Like, it's not just a delusional, paranoid fear. I think fear is ruling over a lot of this, and that's a very Star Wars-y thing. We're seeing a lot of people afraid and a lot of people dealing with the fear in ways that are hurting the rebellion, but he was right. Cinta gets shot, and that's what Cassian is afraid of happening to Bix. He loses everyone. He tells Jin in Rogue One, "You're not the one who's lost everything." He's terrified of losing everything. He just lost his best friend a year ago. He's on the field making these judgment calls and trying to relay them to the leader, and they don't listen. Nobody's listening, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
So the rebels can't get stuff right. You have Mon Mothma still playing politics, which, I mean, good for her, but she's trying to go through the system and the system is failing. You have Luthen, who's not listening to his people in the field and really getting sucked up into like paying too much attention to what Ghorman would mean for the rebellion and not like what his people are seeing as far as what that would mean. And then you have Saw, who's like a pirate rebel. Like he from these episodes, like he doesn't care about the rebellion at all. That's what I take away from Saw from these episodes. Like maybe he's starting a rebellion, maybe he needs the fuel for his fighters. That does not come across here. He's a little bit of a wackadoo. He's saying things like, think of it, you know, all the fuel you could take, we could go wherever we want, do whatever we want, whenever we want. That's pirate language. That's language that we hear from Star Wars pirates. The rebels are fractured and broken and all over, like not only in their like main sections, but then also within those sections. Like, how do they win? How do they win?
Well, you're hitting the nail on the head here. Is they don't have leadership right now. You know, they're not united right now, and we're seeing all of it fall apart. Luthen can't keep it together. Andor is like trying to keep it together, but now he's battling with Luthen, and maybe they sorted that out. Now if Bix is all, you know, healthy and ready to fight. I thought that was another interesting line of dialogue they kept putting in of like, we need you to be strong, like be strong. With the heist on Ghorman, there's a great callback to the Aldani heist where Vel is given like the mission brief. And I love a good mission brief, like especially when it's a heist. You know, here's how we're going to pull off the heist, right? But she did a similar brief in the Aldani arc last season, where it was like, we need to know if you're in all the way. She does the same thing this season, saying, if you can't follow the orders, you got to leave right now. Like, don't think, just follow orders. Good soldiers follow orders. Like, I'm surprised that like that line didn't make it in there at some point as some kind of poetry moment, but same idea there of like, we have to be on a team here and you need to respect the chain of command. And great foreshadowing moment, like only Cinta and I are going to have blasters. Nobody else. What happens? Some bozo pulls out a blaster and the whole thing goes awry. And that entire mission only went down because Luthen ignored Andor's advice. And Luthen telling Andor to be the leader. But is Luthen the leader then? You want Andor to be the leader, but like you said, like he gave you his assessment. You're not trusting him. Now it's falling apart. Mon's doing her best in the Senate. She's not on the, battlefield per se. You pan over to Saw, and like you're saying, this is Saw. I love, Joey and I were texting, audience, and I was like, that scene was great. Let it run wild. Such a great scene. And Joey's like, what a loon. What a loon. Yeah. I think that's great for entertainment. I needed some more like relief in entertainment within these, and Saw provides that. I can't wait to see more of Saw's chaos. But yeah, he's not the leader. He's not doing anything to help. Exactly what you're saying here is we don't have that right now. How do we win? Well, we win when everyone finally comes together. We know what happens. That's the funny thing. You're like, how?
Saw, I mean, I don't know how much time we spend on Saw since he was like the least amount of time dedicated to the character.
Really short.
But packed a punch. And to think that he is this far gone at this point. I know a lot about Saw Gerrera. I've grown up with Saw Gerrera. I watched Saw Gerrera grow up, but basing it solely off of what we see in Rogue One, I would have expected at this point for him to be a rebel leader. Last season, he had a great series of speech, whatever you want to call it, about him being the only rebel leader with clarity of purpose. That clarity is a fog now.
Luthen says the same stuff though, dude. He's high in his own supply too.
Yeah. Except Saw gives a little bit more, from my perspective, of brokenness. He's truly lost. Another line from that same speech last season is that he says all of those rebel leaders, including the Ghorman front, are lost. They are all lost. He, to me, in this is the most lost. Again, no rebel activity, at least that we know. And maybe he's keeping it a secret because he doesn't trust Will yet. And maybe it's all a ruse. Like, he's putting on a face. He's doing Clark Kent Superman stuff here, which would be great. I would love to see that. But as of right now, my interpretation is that he's a bit of a loon. And I have seen him lose the most. I saw him have to be a rebel at a very young age, get trained by Anakin Skywalker to be a rebel. He lost his sister at a very young age. He calls this gas his sister, right, in this episode, and he's turning to the gas as a drug, and Bix is turning to drugs because of their trauma, because of their PTSD to deal with it, which is very heavy, super heavy stuff. But it does not show Saw being the rebel leader that I thought he would be at this point in time.
It's not going to be him. You know, It doesn't end up being him.
Yeah. So to the point of seeing how it ends, I think
it's funny we're pretending that like there's going to be a different outcome here, Joey, that we're like, oh, you want to see these people come together. They don't. All these people are gone. The only one you're going to see again is Andor.
Yes. But, well, we see Saw.
Mon and Bale, briefly.
Seesaw.
Seesaw run.
We do know how it ends, and I think we've talked a bit now about how this has kind of subverted my expectations of like knowing how the thing ends and the way that I would feel about this show, knowing what comes next. But this is really changing a lot for me. I think now when I think of the scenes of Saw in Rogue One, I can sense his regret, not only of what happened between him and Jin, but all of it. You can see the years of regret pass over him in that final moment, I can.
Breathing oxygen in that? Like, is he not high in that moment or less high than he might have been in this episode?
Maybe that's true, or maybe he's huffing the gas.
Yeah.
I don't know. But either way, his body's destroyed. But I can see it. I can see. We talk a lot on Krypton to Alderaan about filling in the somehow, and I didn't know there was a somehow there to fill in, but this feels really good. I mean, it's not good, but it feels good to fill in these spaces. It makes those moments of him in Rogue One feel so much more fulfilling to me. And the same with all of Rogue One and A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. Like, my question here, my main like thesis question is how could they possibly win? Like, we know they win, but this ragtag team of infighting rebels going against this version of the Empire does not feel like it should win. So when they band together to win in Return of the Jedi, all of this history now, like, with me in my mind, feels so much more fulfilling. I mean, I love the original trilogy. I love Return of the Jedi. It's great. But now we have this. Now I have this. And I'm thinking about Return of the Jedi and the end of A New Hope when I'm watching this show and thinking about how much more this is adding to how I feel at the end of those things. And it's an incredible thing to do.
Right. I mean, we talked about this last week with Brasso. It's like, oh, this guy who was a hero didn't get the hero's death, no fanfare. No one's ever going to remember him except the people behind the fourth wall watching the show. The rebellion has no clue who he is. Andor does. Andor doesn't make it. No one even knows who Andor is, right?
Yeah.
You're like, we're waiting for Luke to come out with his laser sword, with his like bullseyeing womp rats back home. But yeah, there's all these people on the street level that we get to see in Andor, which is what makes it special, what makes it so heavy, because heroes, they like exist in fairy tales, really, you know, or at least the stereotypical way we think about them. But yeah, Andor and Brasso and Cinta and Vel, like those people are all heroes, but they just don't get the top line billing.
You put on the uniform, you know the risk, or whatever Cassian says, justifying taking out that soldier. But that's the theme here.
Yeah, you don't even know that you don't even know you're a soldier. You know, you don't even know you're a hero. You don't even know that there's a war going on. You're just doing what you need to do to survive.
You know what? The saddest part, again, is, I'm going to go back to the saddest. The saddest part is Cinta. Now, they've ended 2 arcs with the death of a character that
off screen.
I love. Yeah. Just random blaster shot happening off screen. They are really raking in the trauma I'm now going to be afraid of the end of the next arc, although the end of the next arc might be the second Ghorman massacre, which we know is coming because of Star Wars Rebels. In pretty sure it's 2 BBY is when Mon Mothma kind of defects from the Senate, citing the Ghorman massacre as the reason. These 3 arcs are setting up this new thing that's going to come to a head of the Empire blasting away a lot of Ghormans. And I think that's what we're going to see in the next. I mean, maybe that's the end of the next 3rd episode.
Right.
So we don't have to see some character we love getting got off screen. I'm kind of hopeful for that, actually. I don't want another one. Like, I really loved Vel and Cinta, and they were getting back together, and I was like, oh, something obviously terrible is going to happen because they're reconciling.
She says, like, oh, we're not as good separate. We have to be together. We're more powerful together, and we'll tell Luthen that. Oh, of course, You're not going to be making it out together. And Vel had said, oh, I was only going to take this mission if you were going to be on it.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't, if Cinta wasn't on the mission, she could still be around.
Cinta's whole thing last season was that the rebellion was more important than their relationship. And then she comes back. I had an accident. I'll tell you about it someday, but it made me reprioritize some stuff. And then this happens. That's a really terrible way to do this, Tony Gilroy or whoever wrote this episode. Like, that is painful.
It's going to happen again. The same thing is going to happen with Bix. Andor is going to have to make a tough decision. You leave someone behind or someone gets taken from you in the heist that goes wrong. And that's the risk that you run. And that's the whole point of this, is like, calibrate your enthusiasm of like, do you want a happy ending? Because that's not how this is going to go. We're in a war here.
Yep.
So sacrifices are going to have to be made. And even Bix understands that, She's like, if I'm going to give it all, I want to know that we win. So, Cinta, I'm sure, feels the same way.
Friendly fire, though.
Yeah, it sucks. But when Vel is recounting that later and the kid's crying and she's like, don't you dare cry. You're going to carry this forever.
So good.
Like,
yes.
I love that they showed the repercussion of it. Like, you have no idea the loss this is for the rebellion. Like, she was a warrior. Like, was it a bloodied warrior or whatever she said? It was like a really interesting way to describe like your lover.
It's actually a line that I picked up on. Vel says she was a blooded warrior.
Blooded?
And I don't know if that's a saying that I don't know of, but in my mind when I saw that and read it on screen because I watched with the subtitles on, I thought that was a really interesting way of saying that, because it's neither cold-blooded nor warm-blooded. Like, she was maybe a cold-blooded soldier and she carried out assassinations, but she was also very kind and loving and warm-blooded. Right. And like their relationship was amazing and they loved each other and it was beautiful. That's the way I interpreted that line. And mainly because I didn't know if it's like a saying by itself, just blooded. But maybe it also just meant like she had blood on her hands. Like, she's been in this fight since she was 6 years old and she's done the work. And you have not done the work. And you brought this blaster not knowing how to use it. Anyway, there's multiple interpretations. But I really loved that was the way that was worded. Yeah,
I like that too. Especially if you want to compare that to the other, relationships on the show. You've got Deidre and Cyril, and like, they're cold-blooded. Yeah, for sure.
Turn out the lights.
It's so good to see you so happy. Like, they're cold-blooded. Yeah, obviously Bix and I love that poetry of all those relationships. You've got Bix and Andor have this like choreographed like goodbye that was like beautiful in its own right. And when they come back together, like, they love each other. It's like they're together. So that's going to be, that'll be even harder if and when, I'm going to guess when that ends. That's going to be tough too. The cost of this goes back to the little wins versus the loss here. Again, in the original trilogy, we have loss, maybe like one loss per movie, friends or family getting killed. We're getting this much more frequently now, and like, we do need to calibrate, or I need to calibrate my emotional reaction maybe, or maybe this will desensitize me to it. Although another thing about these rebels is they're getting very sensitive, and Bix is like taking drugs, and Saw's taking drugs, and Cassian's super paranoid and afraid. Fear is seeping down into the rebellion. Calibrating our expectation of loss here is very strong because we've lost these two characters. In this next arc, we're definitely going to see more loss. If the massacre is coming, it's going to get even crazier. We haven't seen a ton of Saw yet, but we've introduced him, and presumably, like, maybe we'll get more of him in the next arc. By the way, I loved when they were leaving that Dakar planet, and we got a little X-Wing action, maybe a little gratuitous, but I needed that gratuitous X-Wing moment. All that was missing was a banana, banana, but I guess Saw's Rebels wouldn't really fit for them, but I was here for that. Yeah, I think seeing some more Saw would be cool, and getting some chaos that really throws Luthen and Mon and Andor and just like boom, as Saw would say, right?
Yeah, I agree. I would love to see more Saw. I would love for what we see from Saw next to challenge what I said this podcast episode about him not being the rebel leader I expected him to see. Because you bring up a good point that a lot of stuff is going to go down in the next arc with the Ghormans, and like I've been saying, that will be the timeline of seeing Mon Mothma leave the Senate, which we saw in Rebels, which also corresponds to like a confrontation between Mon Mothma and Saw Gerrera. So maybe we'll see that in live action. Either way, we're gonna have to see more of him, and maybe going to have to see like more of a rebel leader vibe from him in order to even like consider confronting Mon Mothma and her band of rebels.
Yeah. I've got enough of Saw hiding in a cave talking about being a rebel.
Yeah.
I would like to see some rebellion. Like, you are going to have some rebels in your rebel show, right? Yeah. I'm waiting for that, and I'll calibrate my enthusiasm and expectations. But I think just like they introduced, Bail Organa briefly in this episode to prime us for that, like maybe that's the same thing with Saw. Let us know, listeners. We want to know what you thought about this arc, where you think we're going next week. Leave your comments down below. We'd love to hear from you. And make sure to hit subscribe and tune in next time for more nerdy pop culture, but mostly Star Wars. Thanks for tuning into the show today. I've been Royce.
I've been Two Tubes.
And we've been Krypton to all.
Dakar.